This is Doleo, an original thriller fiction podcast presented in serialized format, a chapter at a time. Written by Jared Canton, narrated by Joshua Canton, a SteadyChaos production. Previously on Doleo. It was the worst news I had received since doctors had confirmed Dad's own paralysis. While there was still time to prevent my own, it wouldn't matter if I could walk, if Rodney could too. Rodney had to be stopped, regardless of what that meant for my well-being. Dad and Kinsley were all that mattered. I had failed protecting James, and Cindy, and even Dad and Kinsley, but I wouldn't fail again. My life meant nothing without them. Doleo had one last mission, one last lonely walk down a dark alley, one final visit with the struggles, and I knew what had to be done. Ross, however, was another lingering matter altogether. As it stood now, he was likely questioning whether I had the capacity to be Doleo, questioning everything he knew about the case. But if he's questioning himself, he wouldn't for long, because he doesn't seem like the kind of guy to waver in his convictions without good reason. So Doleo would march, one last time, for one final reason. If days, weeks, passed with no Doleo, no masked vigilante tearing up the night, targeting blood struggles and other dark forces, Ross would start to wonder, where did Doleo go? And the answer to that question would lead right back to me. This solidified my only option. Before Ross could settle back on me, Doleo had to make a last stand. I had to make my last stand. Because even worse than Ross coming back for me is the blood struggles coming back for me or Dad or Kinsley. I had to kill Rodney and do it without taking any damage because, as Kinsley said, the next blow I take may be the last I take upright on my own two legs. "What now?" Dad asked. I turned to find him much closer than I anticipated. His condition allowed him to be quite stealthy at times. There were no pounding footsteps to announce his entrance. No shuffle of feet, just a silent, steady approach. "What do you mean, what now?" I replied. "You know, what now?" "I do. So?" "My hands are tied. You had a choice in the beginning, and you made the wrong one. You have a choice now, too, and you're making the wrong one again. I no longer have a choice, Dad. You do, and you did, and you took the easy way out." "The easy way out?" My hand shook now. This bulky neck brace felt like a noose. And I realized at that very moment why I had never been a true trial attorney. Maybe it wasn't that I truly preferred to help victims, or that I wanted to make a difference. Maybe those were excuses to appease self-doubt. Maybe I didn't have the stones for the big decisions. Maybe Dad was right. Yeah, the easy way out. Sometimes in this world you have to face the consequences. You have to face the music, and take the hard path forward. So you got caught up in the moment and a guy fell off a roof. It was an accident, but it happened. You tried, and that's admirable. That's the son I'm proud of. I'm a public official. I put people in prison. I don't chase them off buildings. I tried to turn a negative into a positive in the best way I knew how. But you did it. It happened. And it would have been tough for a while. You would have had reporters nosing around your business. But it would have blown over. But you couldn't face the music, so you lied. And then you lied to cover up a lie. And now where are you? You jumped over a pile of shit only to fall into a pit of it. It's irrelevant. I could have done a lot of things differently, but I can't go back. I can't fix what's broken any more than you can. What's that supposed to mean? He fired the words back at me like molten lava. What if you never adopted me? He sat silent for a moment, said nothing. Where would you be now? He exhaled slowly, looked as if he was searching the void in his brain for the perfect words to answer a dangerous question. I don't know, he said, anticlimactically. I do. You wouldn't be sitting there. You'd be standing. My vision blurred, and I felt something pull down my face. I wiped the wetness away with embarrassment. Maybe so, he said. We can't change the past, but if I could change one thing, I wouldn't go back and tell Ross the truth. I'd go back and let Brett beat the shit out of me that day on the playground. I'd let him beat me until his hands bled, because it didn't matter. He could never damage me as much as knowing that I'm the reason you live in a chair has. It was the first time I had fully admitted my guilt aloud. Dad and I lived in a very close-knit, closed-off life, and although we only had each other, we had never truly spoken of or investigated that day fully. You were just a kid. But I wasn't even your kid. Now listen. He moved closer. The vision of him rolling towards me only further aggravated my stewing guilt. You're my son. I would rather sit, crippled, this one lifetime at your side, than run an eternity through the life I had before I met you. He reached for the counter and dragged himself upright on twisted legs. His eyes leveled with mine. He braced his left forearm on the countertop and reached his right hand carefully to my shoulder. I felt it squeeze. Tonight, Doleo, one last time, I said. I wish you wouldn't. I wish you'd just let him go, fade away, bury him in everything he's done, and work with the police for protection. Stand with me as Ryder, not Doleo, and face the consequences, whatever they may bring. It's not just about us anymore. I reviewed Rodney's record. I came across his felony charge. It was an assault outside Mass Medical during an alleged heroin deal, just as Kinsley said. Dad nodded knowingly. The file is sealed, but I accessed it. It was Kinsley, Dad. You heard her story. He'll come for her, then you, then me, and I can't let that happen. She's not safe until you what? He cut me off, challenge in his voice. Kill them. Who's them? I don't know yet, but all of them. There's no such thing as killing all the bad guys, Ryder, or even all the blood struggles. You're just one man, and a seriously injured, compromised one at that. Blood will just beget more blood, probably yours this time. I didn't say this was an easy way out, but like you said, it's time I stand up and face the music. Episode 26. Through the Fire, Part 1. Shadowy figures dragged my lifeless body as if it were slaughtered forest game. Helpless to fight back, blinded by a thick layer of blood, I listened. Men laughed around me as my heels dragged on the pavement. Then, my goggled vision went from black to red, then bright pink. I was inside. Light illuminated the goggles' glass, and the remains of Ross cast a hue on everything I saw. I pivoted my eyes downward as Rodney and a large man lifted me up. Someone fastened the dangling handcuff to my other wrist and hung me from the ceiling, on a hook, or chain, or wire. My head tipped forward, and my body sagged, hopelessly flaccid. One of them ripped the goggles off my head, and then pulled my lower face mask free. My head fell back. Still, they laughed. Fucking pros. I think it was Rodney that spoke. They should pay you more, man. The same man spoke again. I was almost certain it was Rodney now. The pork did the hard part for us, Rodney said. I couldn't speak as he took my gun and whip chain and tossed them on the table. I pondered on the permanence of the nothingness permeating my nervous system, wondered if I'd ever walk again. My mind reverted to more immediate matters, figured even if I could walk, it wouldn't matter now. You faking this shit, man? Rodney moved closer, lifted my leg, jabbed something sharp into it, a knife, or steel shard of some sort, and then he released the leg. I tried to hold it up, felt a twinge of something, nerves perhaps, fire as I did, then saw Rodney's pleased face as the leg swung back to rest, lifeless, harmless. My toes tingled intensely now, and I wondered if that was normal, or if it were a sign of anything. You and your dad make quite the pair now. He laughed and pivoted to his men. You two, watch the veg. He's gonna want to see this. I wondered, had he known about my condition, would a simple pain test have convinced him of my paralysis? He held his right arm outward, pointing behind me at what I presume were his men. "Time to clean up some loose ends." My eyes tracked him. He noticed. I curled my lips into a grimace. "Look at that. You look like overcooked fucking pasta. And you're still trying to protect Daddy and the bitch." I screamed, but solely in my mind. Only a faint groan escaped into the real world. Laughter boomed around me again. Rodney left the warehouse with 3 men, leaving 2 guards. Clearly, he wasn't just seeking to eliminate Doleo. No, he wouldn't be satisfied with death. He wanted more, needed to take everything, establish equality of loss. The remaining 2 men slowly circled my dangling carcass like sharks around wounded prey. The first passed, and I watched as he traversed the 6 feet in front of me. Felt my neck turn slightly to follow him as he progressed to my side. Thought it was a good sign that I could now at least move my head, even slightly. The second came into view, just feet from me. He was black, tall and rail-thin, bordering on malnourished. He had on large, baggy clothes that fit him as if he were a clothes hanger. His sharp, pointy shoulders jetted out, and the shirt propped loosely therefrom, appearing to at no point touch any of the additional flesh as it hung, tent-like. I wanted to snap him in half. As the skinny guy curled behind me, the second man again emerged into view. He was older. Gray spots speckled his beard, and his bald head reflected the light from above with startling efficiency. He smiled, revealing 2 rows of yellowed teeth edged in with layered brown decay. They were as dull and unpolished as his head was reflective. "You know that guy driving the car?" the skinny guy asked. "Can you be more specific?" The words fell out. No hesitation, no struggle, no mumbling incoherence. My legs spasmed outward an inch, but neither noticed. "The guy you stabbed through the neck and dragged out of a moving car? That's specific enough?" the older guy clarified. "Thanks. Yeah, I remember that guy. He was driving very unsafely." I was beginning to feel things, pings and twinges of activity in my legs. I tried to wiggle my toes, looked down, couldn't tell if I succeeded. "He was my son," the skinny guy said. "And here I was, thinking we could be friends," I managed. "You see this?" The older guy walked up to me with a large red can. It had a long, thick yellow tube extending from it. "Is that an enema for particularly large assholes like you?" He growled, pulled a steel lighter from his shirt pocket, flipped it open and sparked a flame that flickered and danced for a long while. "When Rodney gets back, we're gonna light your girlfriend on fire until she burns out. Then we're gonna start your dad at the legs, make him watch the flames crawl up his body, and then when he's just about to burn out, I'm gonna drench you in this here gas and toss your cripple ass on top of his. You get that, bitch?" He reached out and slapped the skinny guy's hand, a celebratory conclusion to his graphic revelation. Neither man appeared armed as they strode around the room confidently. I found their comfort level presumptive and a bit offensive. I had killed at least 5 struggles. At minimum, I deserved 2 dedicated, armed grunts. Instead, they had given me clowns, and unarmed clowns at that. "I gotta piss." The old guy moved towards a door at the back of the warehouse. I turned my head and examined the rest of the room quickly. The warehouse was smaller than it looked from the outside. Wooden, stacked pallets occupied about half of the open space, the rest sparingly occupied by a few chairs and a cheap table. On the table, several small arms were lined up carefully. Next to them, my whip chain and my Glock. The Glock glistened invitingly under the dome light hanging just above. The skinny guy paced past me again. My thumb bone exploded as I violently yanked my left hand through and free of its cuff. No longer fastened to both hands, the cuff chain slid free of the metal hook I had been hanging from, and I plummeted to the floor in a pile. My legs crumpled beneath me, but I managed to collapse forward, forearms into the table. It flipped, and I grabbed the handle of my whip chain, livened a weakened arm, and swung it like a leather whip at the skinny guy as he turned. His face pinched in horror as he closed his eyes and tried to duck away, but the midpoint of the chain throttled towards his neck, clipping it, sending the dart careening around him until the dart burrowed into his fleshy throat. I pulled, and the skin on his neck peeled open. He spun like a top before crashing down upon the concrete. There, he writhed, clawing at his neck, gurgling and coughing, as copious amounts of blood poured to the cement. The old guy burst out of the bathroom, running towards me, just 18 feet away, then 12. My legs remained motionless, feelingless, and I patted at the floor desperately seeking one of the several scattered handguns. I located, chose one, and aimed, pulled the trigger. Nothing. The man toppled into me. My arms, still weak, felt foreign, almost dreamlike, as I tried to subdue his fists as he rained blows down upon me. He swung hard at my midsection, and realizing I couldn't overpower him in this condition, I stared into his eyes, let him hit me. He threw haymakers at my stomach as I clenched my muscles tightly, or tried. My arm patted the cement for the familiar feel of my Glock. He pushed me down, pinning my shoulders to the floor. My left hand, finally, found the gun, but my prior escape efforts had immobilized my thumb. I pinned the gun against my side and slipped my middle finger under the trigger guard. I rapidly fidgeted my digit. 5 fast twitches, 5 sequence shots resulted. The last one clipped the old guy's right shoulder and sent him reeling back to the floor, clutching his neck area. I scooted backwards, recalling how Dad had moved the fateful day he was shot. Using my arms, I pushed in retreat, created a safe buffer between he and I, and switched the gun to my good hand. Just 8 or so feet apart now, I trained the gun on Grandpa Gangster. He stared back at me in disbelief. Now, I breathed hard, exhausted, seemingly unable to move much more than my trigger finger, which was enough. I let my arm rest on the floor, trained the gun in his direction. Again, what were you going to do to Kinsley and my dad? He said nothing, almost looked regretful, at least selfishly, knowing now what he had coming. Maybe he felt sorry for the things he had done in his life. Maybe he was sorry he hadn't considered me a more legitimate threat. Either way, he was in the middle of regretting something. You know, about that red can, I goaded him. That wasn't my idea. I just take orders. He held his palms up. Would you have followed those orders? He didn't respond. I lifted my knee. Surprisingly, my leg stung with activity, and I used my heel to push me back another foot. Every minute brought with it slightly more control of my body. If I had enough time, it was possible I'd be walking before they got back, and if I was walking, I had a chance. Would you follow? I broke the words up intentionally, almost as if reprimanding a disobedient dog. Yeah! The silent shot ripped his jaw off before he could even pronounce the S. I tucked the gun into my waistband, fastened the whip chain to my side, and tried to stand again. Cranky legs responded, and I dragged myself upright. Braced my weight on the back of the folding chair. Grabbed the gas can and a steel lighter from near the fallen table, and found the strength to swing the canister onto the chair's seat. If I was getting out of this with Dad and Kinsley alive, then I was going to have to be creative, because physically, man to man, I just wasn't right. Dad! I yelled into my communication device. There was no reply. Using the chair like a walker, I slowly made my way around the perimeter of the room. I dumped the gas generously at each entrance and exit, a little less liberally around the remainder of the walls. I tossed the can into the center of the room, and slowly, relinquishing the assistance of the walker, fell to the floor and crawled to the door. Using the handle for leverage, I pulled myself up, killed the lights, and tumbled back into the alley near where Ross lay dead. I leaned back, rested against the wall of the warehouse, just feet from the door Rodney had used earlier to exit. I peered around the corner and made sure I was within range. For this to work, I had to be close. After several minutes, a twisting beam of light angled into the drive, headlights, then a car. Under the cover of night and the light layer of snow that now blanketed my still body, I peered around the corner to the building front. First out of the car, Rodney, then the white henchman. Both had a hold of one of Kinsley's elbows as she violently struggled. "I like a bitch with fight," Rodney said. He followed the statement up with a hard slap to the side of her head. Next out of the car were the two additional henchmen, one black, one Latino, and between them, Dad. They carried him by the elbows as well. His angled, limp legs dragged, leaving a thin, dark trail on the snow-covered pavement. "You hit her again!" Dad scolded, and the man to his right responded in kind with a close-fisted shot to Dad's head. Dad took it, glared back, and then directed his gaze in my direction. I ducked back behind the wall and waited for a few seconds before looking out again. "Ah!" Dad said, falling to the ground, free of the men's grip. He glanced up, nodded. Rodney, his helper, and Kinsley disappeared into the structure as the two lagging men tried desperately to lift Dad upright again. I opened, flicked, and tossed a lighter at the door nearest me, and the flame followed the trail of gas obediently. I heard the roar of the fire as it spread around the building interior. I stood, limped, fought, staggered towards the two men now trying to lift Dad. The black man noticed and reached for his waistband. My right leg gave way and I stumbled forward and fell. Dad hugged the legs of the Latino man and he tipped like a fallen tree. The wind generated by his falling body blew a waft of snow outwards from his landing point. I squeezed off a shot from a knee, hitting the black man in his lower leg. I squeezed off several more rounds. His body bucked and lurched before crashing into the snow. I aimed the gun at the second man, now tangled violently with Dad, but I froze. Watched as Dad and the man's bodies intertwined, struggled. I couldn't fire, didn't dare, couldn't send another bullet in my dad's direction, no matter the circumstance. I fought back to my feet, charged. Dad held on to the man desperately as a bright orange reflection from the growing flames glowed down upon them. I kicked the thug's head hard and fell backwards onto my ass, wielded the whip chain and squeezed the dart in my fist, saw blood spew from my hand as the dart carved into my gloved, urgent grip. I screamed and perforated the man repeatedly with the dart as Dad held him in place. "Ryder!" Dad screamed. "Enough!" The man no longer moved as I delivered the final 5 or so thrusts with the dart. Dad reached out and shook me, dragged me free of the moment. "Kinsley!" he said. I turned back to see the large electric door opening. Flames had begun lapping the old, dry wood of the building's exterior trim. I turned, stepped forward to the edge of the flames. They burned 6 feet high, severing my location from Rodney and his sole remaining enforcer. Rodney held Kinsley. Her body backed up to his gun aimed on her. A flash of remembrance of Cindy, her untimely death, foreshadowed how this could go if I failed. Again. Not this time. Rodney's head bobbed side to side as he tried to locate me through the flames. His thug moved closer, examined the flames blocking the largest exit. A mistake. Way too close. He scanned exits, panic-stricken, then coughed hard as I crouched behind the cover of hungry flames, waiting for him to step closer, just one more stride. I grasped the handle of the whip chain, let it dangle to the cement and began whirling it with purpose. Before he noticed my position, I launched the dart. It cut through the flames and connected. I pulled hard, or as hard as I could, heard something thud to the ground. Then I heard agonizing screams, and I pulled harder. 2 hard rows, then a third, and the man was buried in the flames before me. I tried to pull the whip chain free, but I couldn't muster the strength to free it. The man, now enveloped in fire, fought his way up and ran into the night, past Dad, into the lot. Behind him, the whip chain dragged, clanking off the pavement as a mere ball of fire zigzagged, panic-stricken. Screams. Then he fell to rest. Gunshots demanded my attention, ripped through the flames in my direction, wide to both sides, I think. Dad had dragged himself behind the car to safety, and as the fire darted left and right, beyond the stewing inferno, I could intermittently make out Rodney's cold eyes, trained behind a gun held high. Just beside him, Kinsley, her face white, but calm and still. The building, fully engulfed in flames, blasted my face with air, and I moved closer to the large entrance. "Ryder!" Dad screamed from behind me. "It's too late, son!" It can't be. Not when you're willing to take the hard path. I love you, Dad. Without looking back, I grasped 2 handfuls of snow from the ground and patted it on an exposed face and hands. My skin tightened, and I was reminded of what cold felt like, at least to me. And without another word, I walked calmly into the flames.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed Doleo, please come back for future episodes arriving at regular intervals, and subscribe and rate us on your favorite podcast application.